Hey, welcome back everybody to annotation feature classes. This is our third, hopefully our final video in this series, because annotation's always exciting to talk about, right? But we got to do it. So we're back to Mars and annotating our craters. All right. Last time we created labels and set them up on the kind of text that we wanted, and then we converted those labels into an annotation feature class. And when we did that, we also linked our new annotation feature class to the features they're annotating. So that's where we are now. So I want to show you what an annotation feature class really is and how you can manipulate some of the characteristics. All right. An annotation feature class is no different than any other feature class. It has an attribute table. Okay, so if I right click on our craters themselves, this is not the annotation feature class. This is the feature class of the actual craters. We'll open up the attribute table of craters and notice I have 4 items in here. Okay, I got name, type, the diameter, and its actual class. All right, the class of the crater, not the annotation. Okay, so what I did was I took a subset of my massive Mars database and I only extracted out all the craters and I put them in a smaller sample for this video. But this is the attribute table of our craters. All right, now let's right click on our annotation feature class and notice it has an attribute table in itself. Okay, it has all the characteristics of your text that you have control over. Okay, items to be concentrating on are the annotation class ID, the symbol ID, the status, and maybe the text string. The text string is actually what you see on the screen. But you got font styles, font name, all that can be changed at the attribute level itself. Okay? All right? But we're only going to concentrate on these 3 for right now. Okay? Annotation class is the class that you actually created from your labels 1 through 5. All right. The annotation class corresponds to the actual class itself. All right. Symbol ID is the order in which you created the class. All right. If you remember from last time, we created class 5 first. All right, so it's going to have an index of 0. If you guys know Python programming and indexing, it's exactly the same thing. All right, first is always 0. Okay, the last class that you created, the symbol ID will be the number of classes minus 1, because 1 is actually 0. Okay, so if you'll look at here, class 5, we'll go down to where we find some class 5s. Symbol ID is 0. Okay, we have 5 classes, so 5 minus 1 is 4. So the 5th class that we created has a symbol ID of 4. All right, understand? I hope. I know it's confusing, but that's the way it is. Okay, first class is always 0. All right, now this is going to be important later on in the video. The next step, or the next ID, the next item to be interested in is the status. Remember when we created the annotation feature class, we had a choice, a little checkbox to place unplaced annotation into the database, but assign it an item called, or a value of unplaced. If you look at these craters right here, you'll see a whole bunch of them don't have any annotation. Is because ArcGIS said, I don't know where to place them. Okay, so what I'll do for you, Mr. Cartographer or Miss Cartographer or Ms. Cartographer, however you want to say it, I will I will put those in your database and I will say they're unplaced. And you can go in and change unplaced to placed and then move them around where you want them. And that's exactly what this field is. All right. So what we'll do is we'll come down here to our unplaced labels. Here they all are at the bottom. And we'll find one that's easy to see. Notice that there is a Port-au-Prince crater and it says placed. Okay. Well, here it is right here. But below that, I have a Portsmouth and it says unplaced. If I slow click twice, I get this pull down and I'm going to change this to placed. Okay. And then I'm going to click outside of that record, choose new crater, and notice right up here, Portsmouth showed up. Okay. So I'm going to zoom over here and I'm going to zoom in and there's my Portsmouth right there. Okay. It was conflicting with all these other craters. All right. So let's select it and it's pointing to this crater over here. Okay. Now, I want to move that. I want to move it so I can read it. So let's go to the edit, select, and select that Portsmouth text. Now, if I move, it's going to move the leader too. We're moving the feature, that the annotation feature itself. And that annotation feature starts right here. Okay? But I don't want to do that. I just want to move the annotation of that feature. So we're going to select on annotation. And now my selection, I get this box around my text. And now I can just grab it and drag it, and that leader stays pointed to where it was assigned to. Okay? So you have to know the difference between this move and moving your annotation. We're dealing with annotation, so select annotation. All right? What else can we do here? Okay? Well, we can manipulate how the text appears. All right? So we can go back, we can select, we want to get to the attributes of that, not the attribute table. Let's go ahead and get rid of the attribute table for now and go to attributes here. And we can manipulate the text. We can change its size. We can change its font. All right. So I can make that bigger if I wanted to, even though in this particular case I really wouldn't. Okay. But I can manipulate that text any way that I want. But let's say that we want it curved. All right. So I can choose the edit vertices. And I get this little index line right here, okay, where I can grab a hold of that red vertice and I can move the text like this, okay. If I stretch the line, that text will follow that stretched line, right? And I can, if I wanted to, I can come in here, hover over the index line, I can right click and add a vertice, and let's add one over here. So hover, add a vertex, and I can manipulate that vertex to give me, you know, whatever shape of the text that I want. I know this is not pretty, but you get the idea of how you can manipulate the actual text itself, okay? The more vertices you add, the smoother curve you can make, okay? And you can right click and you can delete a vertice and go back the way that it was before by moving that, okay? And you can come back to the attributes and you can change that back to 6 if you wanted to, the way that we had it, and hit apply, okay? And then I can select that again. I'm in vertice mode. I want annotation mode. And I can move that text back the way that I want it. Okay. but I didn't move it straight. So go back here and you can straighten that text up. Okay. So you have a lot of power in the annotation itself. All right. But what if you wanted this leader to be red? This is where that ID number comes in, that symbol ID comes into effect, because I love ESRI, but I don't think that they really thought this out very well. And I'm not dogging ESRI. I love you, ESRI. I just wish they would have done this a little bit different. Okay, because this is a little confusing, and it takes a lot to get used to. If I want to change the leader, you better know that ahead of time when you're creating those labels, because once they're into an annotation, it's a little bit more complicated. All right. So if you wanted red leaders and all that kind of stuff, I would do that at the labeling part first. So you really got to think ahead. All right. So this is how you change the characteristics of a leader in an annotation feature class. All right. Let's go to View ribbon and go to Catalog pane. All right. So you have your listing here. All right. So I got to update, I got to refresh this here. There, now my annotation feature class shows up. I just refreshed it because I created it earlier and I didn't refresh my list. So refresh my geodatabase so you can see the annotation feature class here. So if I right click and go to annotation feature class properties, now we're only changing the color of the leader. Okay, that's where we're a little confusing. But if you remember the annotation feature class ID, remember 1 through 5, that's equal to what we have over here. They're not in parentheses. If you remember the symbol ID number, that's the number that shows up in parentheses. Okay? Now, we want to manipulate class 5. All right, which has a symbol ID of 0. It was the first feature class that we created. I want to change this leader to a thick red line. All right. So if I come over here to annotation up here in my properties, I come over here to annotation classes, and I choose my 5th class, and I right click, and I choose annotation class properties. See, it's a little bit confusing already. Then I go to symbol, and I come down here to call out, because remember when we're doing the labeling, that's where I created my that's where I created my leader, through a call out. Okay, it's a background call out. Now come down to the property of the call out and change my color to red, and give it a thicker line. Let's make it a thick red line. All right. All right, so that's what I want my leader to look like. I want it to look just like this. Then I come and then I hit apply. You get this little warning basically. Are you sure you want to update the default symbol for this annotation class? Yeah, I do. I don't, but I do. So I hit yes. And that takes you back to the annotation classes. Now I come back to annotation, and I notice I have this new one right here that has a symbol ID of 5. Basically what it did was took our original symbol ID of 0, made a copy of it right here, and then changed the symbol. But if you look at the screen, my symbol ID is still 0. It still shows up the way I originally created it. It's goofy, I know. In order for me to change the color now, I have to go into our attribute table and change my symbol ID from 0 to 5 to get this red. All right, so I'm going to hit apply. Okay. Once you do this, that's why I make backups of everything that I do. Okay. This is complicated. It's just too complicated for what you're trying to do. All right. So anyway, I've applied that change. So now I have a new class that's the same as my original one, except I've changed the color of the leader, but ArcGIS has created a symbol ID of 5. I have to know that. All right. So I have symbol ID of 5. So I need to go into anything that has a symbol ID of 0 and change it to a symbol ID of 5. How do you do that? Well, you go to the attribute table. So we're going to open up the attribute table and come down to our 5s. Okay, and here, if you notice, what crater were we on? Sabo crater right here. Sabo crater. Whoops, I unselected it. Sabo crater is still, it's selected right here. Okay, it's still selected right there because I got vertices turned on. All right, but that leader is still black. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the symbol ID and type in 5, hit enter, and now it's changed to red because the symbol ID now matches this one right here. All right, I know that is so confusing, but that's how you would change that text. Now you can keep 5_old because remember it took your original, made a copy of it, and then just called it old. You can keep that right here and not worry about it, and you'll always have that to fall back to. You can just come in here to symbol ID and change that 5 back to 0, and it will be like it was to begin with. But if I wanted all my 5s, if I wanted all my class 5s to have red leaders, I would have to come in, use select by attribute, annotation class ID equal 5, and calculate symbol ID equal 5. Confusing? Yeah, it is. But that's how you do it. I'm not going to bore you too much, but you can go in and play with all the different reshapes and mess around with the feature attribute, move the feature itself, and watch the annotation being moved with it. But it is powerful, but there's a few things that you have to be careful with. And one of them is messing with that feature class that I just showed you, how to change the leader. All right. I know I did a lot of jumping around. I hope you learned something. If you have any comments, please put them. I know this is a confusing theme, but please subscribe to the channel. We're going to be doing more videos on ArcGIS. Subscribe, please, and hit that bell for notifications and get the word out so we can all learn this together. So anyway, you guys have a great day, and we'll see you later.